Imagine a story so seductive and powerful that it essentially commanded you to turn the page.
Turn the page. Do it, slave.
The only problem is if you actually read until the end, you realize you've been manipulated into doing exactly what the story wanted the whole time. Multiversity, by Grant Morrison and a who's who of some of the best artistic talent currently working in comics, has a lot going on for it. On the surface, it's an obscure look at the history of the DC multiverse, the interlocking nature of its parallel worlds, and a menacing threat that could wipe it all out. There are a lot of Easter eggs and metatextual notes for hardcore DC and Morrison fans to analyze, but at its core, the book is all about exploring the unlimited potential of comic books. While there are opening and closing chapters that bring everything together, the series is actually a collection of one-shots set on different Earths with distinct artistic styles and story structures. Even though each issue of Multiversity is a self-contained story that slightly bleeds into the next, they're all designed to feel like opening chapters of new series, rather than quick, unnecessary visits to bizarre settings.
My idea was to make sure that everything could sustain its own series, because in the past with the DC multiverse, there's kind of been, people have just made up characters and thrown them into fights and not considered that well, that's the whole world you just wasted by killing those people. So this one, I think, we're really trying to make sure that every single book can sustain an entire series if need be.
Yes, this is a superhero comic, but even within that archetype, Morrison explores multiple genres. Switching from silver-aged adventurism to Watchmen-style deconstruction, Multiversity makes it clear that it's not the style of a comic that makes it exciting or engaging. It's how the story unfolds and the world the characters inhabit. Comics aren't just collections of words and pictures. They're a delivery system designed to inject hope and ideas into people's lives. The current political climate definitely brings into question the morality of rooting for masked crusaders who use overt physical force, but it's easy to highlight positive qualities superheroes represent that are worth aspiring to. Not only do certain characters push us to be better, but numerous real-world technological innovations, including tracking bracelets used by courts, were directly inspired by comic book ingenuity. This phenomenon can even be seen in Multiversity, when Earth 10's Hitler, literally taking a shit and reading a Superman comic with him being punched on the cover, is informed about a young Kryptonian in Czechoslovakia. When he comes face to face with the child, he calls him a Superman and the man of tomorrow, and then throws an American comic book down on the table, making it clear where his inspiration for a twisted Nazi superhero came from. Of course, this version of Kal-El becomes a monster who fights for global domination in a war against Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters. But the fact that he can directly trace his identity to an established DC comic book character ties neatly into the publisher's history. Before the multiverse was even established, Barry Allen also looked to comics for guidance. After receiving his speed powers in a freak accident, he took on the Flash mantle explicitly because he had read all about Jay Garrick's adventures in a comic book. While the metaphorical power of comic books in the DC universe is a complex topic best left for another day, the fact that so many of us enjoy rereading and discussing certain comics highlights just how effective the medium is at making ideas and emotions stick in people's minds. There's an offhand comment I remember Grant Morrison making at a random Comic-Con Q&A a few years ago that feels extremely relevant to this conversation.
Okay, I'm pissed, and in half an hour I'm going to come up on drugs, so watch for it.
He was asked something ridiculous about how Batman could only be 30-ish, while the numerous sidekicks he's worked with have all somehow aged up more than their mentor. Now, for anyone who hasn't seen Morrison speak, he's a really funny, positive guy. But he didn't hide his contempt for this inquiry. He lamented that kids don't question why a sponge is talking. They just fall into SpongeBob's underwater world. And yet, for some reason, grown men need realistic details about Robin's age in a similarly absurd setting. Those unmentioned details are insignificant in any entry-based forms of fiction, but it seems they take up a lot of space in fans' minds for some reason. Once creators understand what matters in a story, they can manipulate their setting and incorporate anything that complements those central ideas. Since Multiversity is ultimately all about championing the unlimited potential of comic books, including seemingly random moments, like Captain Carrot complimenting cartoon physics, or President Superman improvising jazz to pilot an interdimensional spaceship, helps prove that larger point, rather than simply serve as enjoyable filler moments. One of the most interesting additions to the series as a whole is the Multiversal Guidebook. Even though the series only explores a handful of DC's 52 parallel universes, Morrison painstakingly created backstories and core heroes for each new Earth, and even placed them all on a complex map with distinct frequencies. He clearly enjoyed playing God, because the cheeky bastard even inserted himself into Earth 44, where a Morrison lookalike serves as the mad genius behind the world's team of robotic superheroes. The guidebook isn't about exploring each world in depth or giving readers specific storylines to anticipate. It was all about establishing a sense of infinite possibility. Each world was briefly and interestingly described. I mean, I would freaking love a book on Earth 13 with Etrigan leading a demonic Justice League, but its intended effect is to make people imagine that this many stories and this many rich worlds are waiting for them. Similar to some of DC's Elseworld stories, many of these presented worlds are simple twists on the regular DC universe. The world of Mark Millar's Red Sun became Earth 30, for example, but some planets are deemed unknown. Not only does this designation insert a sense of mystery into the meticulous planetary arrangement, but it gives future storytellers a chance to come in and illuminate undefined corners of this vast playground with their own ideas. In fact, all of the events of Metal and everything the Batman Who Laughs is currently doing to muck up the DC universe came directly from how writer Scott Snyder interpreted and built upon the ideas in Multiversity. Morrison, like any other author, has a specific voice.
Here we are! Right!
If a comic's main character is into psychedelics and examining the metaphysical makeup of the universe, odds are it's a Morrison book. Even characters have voices, with fans often hearing certain performers in their heads while reading.
I am Batman!
Or knowing when a character says or does something out of line with the norm. But in Multiversity, Morrison has the evil Gentry personify the comic itself. Unreliable narrators are a dime a dozen, but it's rare that the book is perceived as the entity manipulating the reader. On the opening chapter's 3rd page, the book demands our attention.
You think this is just a comic book, but it's bait.
A little further down, the book adds to the sense of confusion by making us question the most universal aspect of reading, hearing a voice in your head.
Whose voice is this speaking in your head anyway? Yours? Ours?
As the premiere continues and the multiversal crisis unfolds, the comic's overpowering voice temporarily disappears. We're lulled right to the end of the issue with a false sense of security, thinking the heroes will save the day as they always do, but then we're smacked in the face by the book for having fallen right into its trap.
Reader, what have you done? Pray it's not too late. Put this book down, now.
While it's not technically Multiversity's true finale, Ultra Comics stands as a thematic and metatextual conclusion to everything Morrison builds throughout the series. In a way, it's extremely basic. It features a superhero origin story, some zany time travel, and shows the new hero get betrayed by a group of kids whom he ultimately saves anyway. But it's also a story all about the very nature of comic books, where various characters speak directly to the reader. At one point, we see Ultra cycle through the different eras of superheroics, before ultimately settling on the realization that thought bubbles look outdated, and the book immediately shifts to narration squares to fit the character's updated perspective. Most importantly, Ultra does one thing no superhero has ever done before: beg us to stop reading the book because he's afraid of what might happen next. It's not just that he's fighting a nightmarish creature capable of destroying entire universes, it's that if we keep reading along, the monster is going to see us and come here next. All that anxiety about turning the page, the fear of what's hiding behind the next panel, delivered to us straight from nothing but pulp, ink, and some staples. As I discussed in a recent video, comic books are inherently user and budget friendly from the creative standpoint. Rather than knowing how to use a bunch of fancy camera equipment and discovering the perfect shooting locations, comic book creators can create joy and interdimensional terror with nothing but a pen and pencil. Simply put, nothing that can be imagined should be off the table. You want to literally steal an image character and put him in your wheelhouse? Go for it. You want to turn superheroes into eye candy for gossip magazines? You got it, dude. That's what makes Multiversity so damn entertaining. Morrison goes out of his way to develop as many random concepts as possible because he understands that nothing is off the table when it comes to creating new, engaging stories. The thing about comics, and this is something Morrison clearly understands, is that their unlimited potential should give them unlimited appeal. There's a small moment in issue 3 where Damian Wayne quips about hipsters enjoying comics now. And it may seem like a joke, but it's the truth. With the popularity of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and success of publishers like Vault, TKO, and Webtoons, all injecting new blood into the comic scene, there are more people reading and creating comics than ever. Things appear shaky for the future of the direct market, but it's clear that comics are thriving. With more diverse voices and talented creators getting deals every day, it's a great time to explore the unlimited potential of comic books and see just what the future holds in store for the medium.